and get that off the ground, because the research also shows that you can keep your doctors, and that's a problem that we have here, attracting specialists to the territory.
Yeah. Well,
if you train and educate them here, and you provide residencies for them here, it is a great possibility that you can keep some of those here as well. And I think we have the pieces, we just need a vision to tie them together and to really put us in a place of improving healthcare and the economic climate altogether, for the territory.
I think the other piece of it too is when you look at the money that we spend on healthcare, with Cigna alone, between the government and the employees, you pay $160 million. You pay $80 million for each hospital. That's $320 million for healthcare for 100,000 people. And what happens is the people that fall in the gap, the hospital ends up picking up the bill and eating it anyway. People always talk about expanding the capacity of healthcare so we have more single payer providers, but they ignore the fact that it's $20,000 a year for health insurance. Either people who can't get health insurance can't afford $20,000 a year. I think we really need to look at how do we create a sort of self-care for our hospitals and the people who live here, right? Because we take care of them anyway. And that would give you an emergency plan, like if you break your leg or something like that, you could go to the hospital and you would have a reduction in your costs, and then be able to give you some type of pharmacy plan that could take care of your diabetes or your insulin for those people who fall in the gap.
Yeah.
If you think about it, for $100 a month, just on St. Thomas, with working people alone, that's $23 million a year extra, more than $23 million extra a year in health insurance, in health money that could be generated. So if we could lower the cost of Cigna, incorporate a plan that powers the local hospital and encourage people to get preventative care, as well as be able to give you an emergency care plan. I think what we do is we strengthen our hospital system, we encourage more people to use it, and we build back the confidence. And so we lose less money as we are now with people moving off island for insured healthcare service.
Let's go to government transparency. The MAP administration recently put up a website. They launched a website that kind of details the expenses in relation to hurricane recovery. But there's also the problem of the governor not allowing people to see what he's doing with the government credit cards. So it's kind of like a message that's kind of mixed to people.
Yeah.
How would you approach that? Because right now people, you hear it in the streets, they're not trusting the government more.
Well, one thing about the Bryan Roach team is we've been effective, and we've been effective in creating transparency, because we started talking about doing just what the MAP team did, and they did it. We started talking about tuition, free tuition, they put forward a bill. We put signs on people's roads saying, looking forward to pave your road. The road was paved. So, we make them motivate and get things done. But transparency is a serious issue in the government, and I think that there's a lot of information available, but the way it's available is very stagnant, like the budget book or a report. We plan to be as transparent as possible, and I've had this discussion with the Daily News as well. Transparency is expensive. I don't want people to miss that fact. These are monies that would not be put into programming. So to build a website and to have it updated and be able to see how much money is being spent all the time, that costs a little money to get the setup. And then you have to have somebody to keep that information up to date. So we're going to make an effort to make this information available to the public. In terms of the governor's office or any other office of the government responding to requests from the press or anybody else, the Sunshine Act is in place. And we'll make those available. I'm still a little foggy around. I've been doing some research on things like autopsies. I don't know, some states allow for autopsies to be public information after the investigation is complete and the court case is settled. So there going to have to be some conversations that we have with the legislature to clarify our public transparency law, and then the meetings law, which has been of great debate for a long time. I think we need to move to get that settled, because it seems like the Daily News, not to put them on the spot, brings it up every time you have an assembly of public officials and that they're not allowed to be in. So we need to sit with the legislature and the public and really come to agreement on what that really means.
And I would just add that I think the issue of transparency usually arises with regard to press requests. I mean, that's how a lot of us get our information. The average citizen is not filing a request for Freedom of Information Act request to the government. And it revolves mostly around, a lot of the times, about what's happening with the government money. What are people being paid? What are the raises that we don't know about that you implement after you presented your budget? These are the kinds of things that are important. And I think there is, as Albert said, there are those instances where you need to clarify the statement of the law, but with regard to public funds and what people earn, those are not protected pieces of information. And people have a right to know, and when you don't provide the information, then you create all of this speculation about what it is you're trying to hide. And if you want people to respect the government, and if you want to conduct business in a way that people respect the processes that you have in place, then you follow the law to the extent that you can, and provide the information so that people can use it.
I think the other piece to that too is one of the things that I think we've been very lax on is policy. If you look at the rules and regulation, a lot of the policy, they haven't been updated since like the Farrelly administration, which is over 20-something years ago, maybe 30. So you have these laws, the lieutenant governor's housing, for instance, right? It doesn't say you can't do it, but it doesn't say you can do it. I think when these issues come up, we need to have clarifying policy that states, no, you can't do that. We don't address these things. Where the governor lives, how much money is in a case of emergency, how much money is allowable to make due for a governor's residence? How much money is allowed on trips for the governor? What is he allowed to spend? We kind of playing gotcha with these issues instead of clearly delineating what the policy should be, and then you have the role. Last night, the lawmaker or whoever is affected comply. Last night I had a great discussion with one of my, I could call him a student because he's in school, about the recent scandal at the Casino Commission and the outlining of the spending that went on there. And he of course, he was ready to crucify the management in charge. But then when he looked at the law and started to look at the policies, he realized there's no policy guiding these things. We have to have concrete policy, and we keep running into the same problems over and over again, and not understanding that we are policy makers. We're the one that say what the law should be, what the limits are, and we have to establish those firmly so that there's no gray area about what is to occur. And that is why you have a situation where the governor is paying for a nursemaid for his mom, or be able to pay $100,000 back for an employee's payment to out of the PFA funds. Those things shouldn't occur, but there's no policy that speaks to what is wrong.
That you can't do it. We're going to wrap up in a little bit, but I wanted to raise one of the criticisms that were levied against you was that you were never elected into office, and somehow for your critics that translates to a lack of ability to govern. How would you, and I guess this goes towards both of you as we
I've
try
been
to.
elected.
Yeah, you've been elected 3 times, Senator, to the Senate. But as we wrap up, I just wanted you to address that, and also, I guess in a way, also try to convince people to go out and vote on November 20th and to vote for your ticket.
For me, when my critics talk about me not being elected before, I'm like, yeah, I haven't. That's a good thing. I think that going into government as an administrator and the Commissioner of Labor, I was able to look at things purely from a mechanical operational point of view and not intersperse too much politics into it. We get into these discussions with our community that are guided by political favor and being reelected. For me, I'm trying to look at my community, understand where it's hurting, where the opportunities are, and help them to get to someplace else. When we talk about changing the course of the Virgin Islands, it's about finally resolving some of these problems that have been languishing for 40 years. Paying attention to people and moving them along a continuum that allows them for a better quality of life, things like healthcare and education, and allows the Virgin Islands to grow as an economy and respect its ecology and the environment around it. You vote for the Tregenza Roach and the Albert Bryan team because we have a different approach to government, one that really concentrates on moving people forward and not about money and things and building, but about building people and creating a Virgin Islands environment that's for all of us.
Senator, last words.
Well, I think when I think about Albert and myself, I think a lot of people who end up in elected office here, one of the deficiencies has been the lack of experience in the private sector, that we need people who have exposure to both. And in Albert and I, probably half of our lives are divided between public and private sector employment. It is a critical thing to understand the needs of business as well as it is to understand the needs of the private sector. And both of us, I think, bring a thoughtful approach to whatever we do. The deliberations in the Senate, I have been known for the way that I approach things, from the analytical, research, etc. I managed a newsroom when I was 23. That was my first career.
Wow.
At 23, the youngest news editor in the history of the Daily News. You could check that out on the
Yep, I saw that. Yeah.
And worked in private enterprise with regard to working at the law firm, so Bowen Handy, etc. I've worked in the government, and I firmly believe that we are as ready as you can be. The office of the Lieutenant Governor, that used to be a place that I hung out and did all my title searches, filed corporate documents, etc. And I have a clear understanding of what we need for that office. We need a safe environment for the people there to work in. We need professional development and state-of-the-art equipment. And we need technology. And we need to protect those original documents that are still vulnerable, in those spaces. And we are ready to start. So vote number 5.
And most of all, as you can see from the interview, we're truly a team.
Well, I can see that. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for clarifying some of the issues and for laying out your platforms and just sharing your enthusiasm and your readiness to govern. We want to invite our viewers to go and vote on November 20th. Make sure that you go to our Facebook page. Your polling sites are there. Election updates are going to be there. And then on election night, we're going to be covering the results as they come in. So tune in 7 o'clock on election night, November 20th at VIYA Channel 4 and 504. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You were watching the News 2 Election Special, sponsored by the Bryan Roach Campaign.